Peace, and welcome to Oddly Familiar Video Game Themes. Today we have episode 101. Without any delay, let's get this started. Our first entry today comes from Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the NES game. Here's the main theme. And here's the flea waltz. There are a few interesting facts about the flea waltz. Number one, it's not a waltz. It's closer to a polka or a gallop. And two, the composer is unknown. Not the most uncommon thing when it comes to older tunes. And the last fact that I want to point out, in Taiwan, this is known as stepped on a cat, which is very different than the name flea waltz. On the Oddly scale, this one gets a 5 out of 5. I would consider it a cover. Up next is a video game tune inspired by another video game tune. Here's the theme titled Game Is On from 99 Vidas. And you may already know where this one's going. Here's Go Straight from Streets of Rage 2. At first listen, it almost sounds like they pulled a sample and used it, and at the very least, it's heavily inspired. 99 Vidas was released on December 22nd of 2016. Streets of Rage 2 was released on December 15th of 1992. On the Oddly scale, this one is another 5 out of 5. I think anyone familiar with Streets of Rage would make this connection almost instantly. Up next comes from the Famicom game Lagrange Point, titled Departure and Arrival. And here's West Side Mob's song, Oh Baby. Definitely not as familiar as our previous two entries, so on the Oddly scale, this one gets a 3 out of 5. Lagrange Point is a Japanese-only game, and the most interesting fact about this one, the game came with an internal sound chip on the board, the Konami VRC7. It adds more audio channels, and it's actually a derivative of the YM2413, which just happens to be the sound chip used in the Japanese Sega Master System. So if it sounds oddly familiar, that's why. Next up comes from F1 Dream. Here's the Car Select theme. And here's the Player Select theme from Knights of the Round. Interesting that they both came from the selection screen, although one is to pick a car and the other is to pick a character. Knights of the Round comes from 1991, while F1 Dream comes from 1988. Both are by Capcom, however they have different composers. The motif can be heard multiple times in F1 Dream besides the car select. For example, here's the course select. It can also be heard on different ports. Here's one from the TurboGrafx 16. the Oddly scale, we'll give this one a 4 out of 5. They're both by Capcom, they're both used on selection screens, but we do have a few more themes that this one sounds familiar to, and we might make a full episode on just this theme. So if you know anything else, feel free to leave a comment. We also want to give a quick shout out to Good Vibe Collecting. When we shared the F1 Dream theme, Good Vibe came through with this Knights of the Round similarity. Next up, we have one from ESPN NBA Hangtime 95, the Hangtime Instrumental. And now let's listen to Mobb Deep's Shook Ones Part 2.
Hold up, son. Word. Yeah.
This one is pretty much just the percussions. It has a small similarity, so we're gonna give it a 2 out of 5. Possibly a 3 out of 5 if we're feeling generous. The Mobb Deep track samples the drums from a song titled Dirty Feet by Daley Wilson Big Band, which was released in 1972. Shook Ones Part 2 was released in February 1995, and ESPN NBA Hangtime in March 95. So while it is a possibility that the game devs were influenced by Mobb Deep, that turnaround time is a little bit quick. So unless the game soundtrack was done at the very last minute, I don't really see it as being realistic.
Hold up, son. Word.
Our next oddly familiar video game theme comes from Persona 5, and it's titled So Boring. That one sure reminds me of Houdini. The freaks come out at night. So the first thing I gotta say, the Persona series is full of great music. If you haven't played any of the games, but you're looking for some good video game tunes, look no further. You will not be disappointed. The Houdini song was released in 1984, and Persona 5 came out in 2016. So unlike our last entry, this one's a little more plausible. But just as the same as the last entry, this one gets a 2 out of 5, or a 3 out of 5 on a good day. Up next, we have Premier Soccer, the prelims background music. And that one sure reminds me of Glenn Frey, The Heat Is On. Quick shout out to Solo Jones for this one. I could hear this one in my head, but I couldn't think of the name. So I posted it in the Discord, and within 1 minute, it was figured out. I also want to give a second shout out to our community in general, because this is basically the exact vibe that we wanted to build. If you want to join, link for the Discord is below. This one gets a 3 out of 5. It's a very small portion of the theme, but it does have a similar feel. Our next oddly entry comes from the 1980 Sega game, Carnival. And that's the waltz known as Sobre las Olas, which translates to Over the Waves. This waltz was first published in 1888, and it remains one of the most famous Latin American pieces of music in the world. There are some other recordings, and I'm sure most people will recognize at least a few names. The game Carnival is a fixed shooter along the lines of Space Invaders or Galaga. And one interesting fact about it, it's the first video game with a bonus round. It may not have directly inspired all of the bonus stages you find in games since then, but it is the first. This Oddly entry receives a 5 out of 5, as we save 5 for covers and samples. Next up, we have the 1996 Super Famicom game, g.o.d, a track named Mr. Bat. This isn't the first time this one has appeared in an episode. Here's Smoke on the Water. Quick shout out to Beal for this entry. As soon as I hit play, I could hear the similarities. There's no waiting at all on this one. The riff starts out almost exactly the same, but then the last few notes kind of drift off in their own unique way. The further you listen to the theme, the more it sounds like Smoke on the Water. It has the exact same buildup, so this one gets a 4 out of 5 on the Oddly scale. It might only be the first section of the riff, but I would bet on this being influenced by Deep Purple and Smoke on the Water. Our last entry is a double whammy. From F1 Dream, here's the F3000 race. And while listening, I hear 2 different themes mixed in there. First up is about 45 seconds in, you hear this. And that sure sounds like the James Bond theme. It's only 4 notes, but as a Bond fan, when I hear those notes, there's nothing else I can think about. And if you listened closely, you may have heard the second part of this double whammy. Here's the beginning where it really stands out. To me, that's Dr. Wily's Castle from Mega Man 2. F1 Dream came out in arcades in April of 1988, which is before Mega Man 2. However, I could only find this theme on the PC Engine soundtrack, which came out after Mega Man 2. Both games are by Capcom, but they do have different composers. Manami Matsumae for F1 Dream, and Takashi Tateishi for Mega Man 2. However, Manami did compose for Mega Man 1, so who knows, maybe this was an unused riff from Part 1, and she let them use it in Part 2. Or maybe she was inspired by Mega Man 2 while making F1 Dream. Lots of questions here, but on the Oddly scale, Bond gets a 4 out of 5, and Mega Man 2 also gets a 4 out of 5. I'll try to find more about this one because it seems too similar to be an accident or a coincidence. So there's episode 101. Our next episode will be all viewer submissions, so feel free to leave a comment and you might end up in episode 102. Last but never ever least, shout out to Golden Tier patrons Bear Sona, Quantum X, MJJ, Juste, and FancyJ. I am ICC, Thanks for watching. Peace.